Hi everyone, welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and Here We Are is a show where we have folks from the community to come on and talk about all of the great things that are happening in town. Today, we have George Wiese. He is a trustee of the Estey Organ Museum here on Burge Street, where he also helps repair and restore the iconic instruments. George is also a conductor, trombonist, pianist, performer, and the executive director at Mountaintop Music Center in Conway, New Hampshire. George came all the way down to talk with us today about Estey Fest, which includes the biennial gathering of the International Reed Organ Society. It also has a lot of other things going on, which are happening towards the end of September, and it's taking place here in Brattleboro. George, welcome.
Thank you. It's delightful to be here. Really an honor.
Well, we are so glad that you took the time on a very hot day to come down and talk with us about the Estey Organ Museum. The Estey Organ Museum is this little gem that we have in town that not everybody knows about.
Yeah.
And so we are going to be talking about that, and also, of course, the Estey Fest, which is coming up. Going back to your early years, you started getting interested in music at a really early age.
I did. I come from a musical family. My childhood home was just outside Philadelphia, so a really rich cultural and music scene. My parents are serious amateur musicians, so I started piano lessons very young.
Mm-hmm.
My parents play brass instruments, so I also took up the trombone when it came time in school to choose an instrument. Music was really the passion. I wasn't much of an athlete as a kid, so I stuck with the arts, and it's led on many adventures. It's been fun. You'd mentioned the distance I came to Brattleboro, and I feel really honored to be included on Here We Are Brattleboro as a non-Brattleboro to some extent, but this wonderful town has become like a home away from home since I've gotten involved with the Estey Organ Museum. I've been making trips down here once every month or 6 weeks or so, and so I've really gotten to know over the past year of frequent trips to Brattleboro. I've gotten a feel for the community and just what a special place this is.
Nice. You went to Juilliard, you went to the Peabody Conservatory, you did some serious studying in your years.
I did some serious music study. I was very fortunate to have good teachers. My trombone playing got pretty good as a teenager, and I was really fortunate to get into the Juilliard School, to work playing my instrument in New York City, and I also have a degree from the Peabody Conservatory, which is part of Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, so I had wonderful opportunities there. It's been sort of an interesting three things in music that I've always done, even since my early studies. I've kept up my piano playing. The joke was that when I went to music school, I didn't really have to do any work waiting tables or any of the stereotypical starving artist type of gigs because my piano chops were always good to pick up work playing for theater or playing for churches, that kind of thing. So I did a lot of piano playing, and my trombone playing got me into some really wonderful schools and access to great teachers, and a real passion of mine was conducting. So I studied conducting, and even since I've been a year-round New Englander for the past 15 years, I've still traveled. I've done a lot of conducting, both in and out of New England. So it's been a great adventure, keeping up sort of three different music careers that sometimes intersect.
Yes, but it's music all the way.
All the way.
And the trombone is such an interesting instrument. You had a great quote. I'm gonna use this because it's so much fun. But you did say, there's never a dull moment when you've got a trombone.
That's true. The trombone, unlike the organ, is a very portable instrument.
Right.
You can play a trombone anywhere, and in my life I've played the trombone in some of the world's great concert halls and cathedrals. I've played on street corners, I've played on television, in Broadway pit orchestras. I once played in a clock tower in Germany. That was interesting. You just never know. You meet wonderful people, and it's such an ensemble instrument, so you're always meeting people to work with. Again, And unlike the organ, which is most often a solo instrument, it's sort of a solitary experience. Not always. Every now and then you get a big gathering of organists like we're having here in Brattleboro this September. So that's fun with the community. But yep, that's true. As a matter of fact, I'm looking forward to having the chance to sit in with the Brattleboro Legion Band actually on this trip to Brattleboro here as we're talking. It happens to be a rehearsal night, so I'm being dragged along by a friend to rehearsal. So I'll meet even more folks with a trombone.
So you're performing in many different ways at a pretty early age. So you're used to performance.
Yes, that's true.
You're used to that kind of thing. And the Mountaintop Music Center, was that a job that you were looking to go for?
It was interesting. I never expected to have an office job or to go into any kind of administration. But I loved our vacations to Maine in the summertime. I just absolutely loved being in rural New England. And I had this crazy idea that I could maybe live in Maine, and that's exactly what I did 15 years ago. And I started, traveling a little bit from there for gigs. I took a part-time job teaching music at the University of Southern Maine for a little while. And then Mountaintop Music Center came along, which is a nonprofit community music school, very similar to the Brattleboro Music Center also. We're located in Conway, New Hampshire, and they needed an executive director. And I was encouraged to apply by a friend, and I thought, well, this would be interesting because I've never done anything like it. But it sure beats being on the road and sleeping in rest stops. So, we'll give it a shot, and kind of the rest is history. The music school we have up there in Conway, little old Conway, New Hampshire, we've got 17 music teachers and about 400 students taking lessons up there. We've also really developed our performance series of bringing concerts into the community, and a project I'm very proud of that I led there. We bought Conway Village's downtown anchor building that was headed for the wrecking ball, and we led the area's largest capital campaign to restore that building, move in our music school, rent out the storefronts, and take what had been a derelict 1930s movie theater and turn it into that region's premier concert hall.
That's so great.
That's such a good... So that's been, talk about an adventure and a big project.
Yes.
It's been a lot of fun, and it's so great to see what that's turned into for our community up in Conway.
Very, very, very rewarding.
So that's my day job.
Yeah, that's your day job.
And then some.
Yes, and you have a really interesting reed organ story, which also brought you to Brattleboro, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. So I was on one of the summer trips to Maine as a teenager, and trolling through a barn full of antiques, and found what I thought at first was a desk. And then got looking at it, and I said, oh my gosh, it has a keyboard, it's an organ. And I'd seen a pump organ before, but I'd never really gotten my hands on one. And what do you know, it wheezed out some notes. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with this thing? But it's kind of neat. So I paid a few bucks for it. And it fit in the back of the station wagon. That was the deciding factor. If it fit in the station wagon, we could take it home. So I dragged this organ home, and I found somebody that could get it working for me, and it followed me around. So there, in front of me, from the time I was a teenager, were these words in Old English type: Estey Organ Company, Brattleboro, Vermont. It's a funny thing about reed organs. Where there's one, there are many. A couple more followed me home. Somehow, I don't know how it happened. And then I got a gig at a church that had an electric piano and a reed organ that nobody had used for ages and ages and ages, decades. It wasn't an Estey, but I thought, well, I wonder if I could fix that thing up. So my first Maine winter, my winter project, I brought this reed organ home from the church, and I had it in pieces all over the dining room and several other rooms, and I figured out how to fix it thanks to some guidance from the Reed Organ Society. So I figured out how to fix this thing up, and that's what really got me into reed organs, playing one every week for a church job, having a small collection, and this small collection eventually turned into a bit more of a collection. And then finding ones out in the wild, I learned a bunch of repertoire for it. And suddenly I had this strange little, what had been a hobby, had sort of eked into my musical life as a professional. That somebody would say, oh, we've had a reed organ restored at such and such a meeting house, and we need somebody that can play a recital on it. And, you know, it would lead to me eventually. And I'd get these little gigs playing recitals. And, of course, I got more deeply involved with the Reed Organ Society, which is an international sort of club association of people that play reed organs, work on reed organs, all of these things. And lo and behold, late in 2022, I got recruited to work on Estey Fest. Here we are. So Estey Fest, in case anybody doesn't know or hasn't heard yet about Estey Fest, is a collaboration. It's a festival being put on by the Estey Organ Museum, the International Reed Organ Society, and the Brattleboro Historical Society. So I understand there was an Estey Fest about 20 years ago in Brattleboro when the Reed Organ Society came to Brattleboro, and the Estey Organ Museum was in its infancy. It was a new entity back in 2005 when the first Estey Fest happened. The museum was only a few years old. So you know, the Reed Organ Society moves around the country for their biennial gatherings. Sometimes it's in Canada. I'm not sure if we've had one in Europe yet, not since I've been involved. But I was recruited by somebody on the Reed Organ Society who said, well, George lives in Maine and works in New Hampshire, so that must be pretty close to Vermont.
Of course.
And I got the call, and I said, well, I'm not exactly close to Brattleboro, but I have a good friend in Brattleboro. So I said, you know, if he's willing to let me crash on the couch on these frequent trips down to Brattleboro, then I think that we could probably do this, and I could get involved. And so we started the planning for this 5-day festival that we're having, which includes the conference of the Reed Organ Society. People have registered ahead for workshops, lectures, that type of thing, presentations, a couple of field trips. It also includes several public performances and things that people in the community can participate in. And that's the end of Estey Fest that I got recruited to work on. I've had a ball over the past 8 months or so planning 4 public performances that will be part of Estey Fest, taking place on the weekend of September 28th and 29th. So right smack dab in the middle of the festival. So those performances are all happening at Epsilon Spires, which is such a jewel right in downtown Brattleboro.
And give us a little background on Epsilon Spires and its history.
I understand that Epsilon Spires spent most of his life as the First Baptist Church. And what I've learned through the Organ Museum is that the Estey family was very active in the Baptist Church. And, you know, Estey, between the 1850s and closing up around in the early 1950s, so at about a 100-year period, Estey made over 500,000 reed organs. Over 500,000 reed organs. And starting just after 1900, they made over 3,000 pipe organs as well. So Jacob Estey, the patriarch, he died in the 1890s. And so about a decade after his death, once the pipe organ division of Estey was really up and running, the family commissioned their own Estey pipe organ for their own church. and that is, or pipe organs are numbered, they call them opus number, like you would a piece of music. When an organ shop makes a newly minted pipe organ, it's called opus, whatever number is next chronologically. So opus 300. So the 300th pipe organ that the Estey Company made.
It's beautiful in that room.
It sure is.
It's beautiful.
And Opus 300, housed at what was the Baptist Church, now Epsilon Spires, is one of the larger Estey pipe organs that was ever made. It has 3 manuals or keyboards on it if you get back around and peek at the console. Really beautiful pipe work, wonderful sounds.
Yes. And shout out to Jamie Moore.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Who has brought people in from all over the country coming to play that organ.
I've been coordinating my trips to land on first Wednesdays of the month as much as I can, so I can hear people play at the lunchtime organ series there, which is just wonderful to hear that instrument and to have it cared for and still be part of the community 120 years later. So we're using that at Estey Fest, of course. We have to use that as part of our performances. So Epsilon has been a great partner in putting these concerts on. On Saturday the 28th, we have a chamber music ensemble coming here to Brattleboro, and this is a little bit of my lives merging. So this Estey Fest is my first public performance in Brattleboro. So that's fun. And I'm bringing a chamber music group that I'm part of that's based on the North Shore, just outside Boston, that plays original instruments of different periods of music. So if we're doing music from the 1700s, we're playing instruments from the 1700s. So I get to play the reed organ with this group when we're playing music from the late 19th century and early 20th century, when reed organs were really in their heyday, as well as their cousins, the French harmonium, the European harmonium. So we're bringing the Arpeggione Chamber Ensemble here to Brattleboro. We'll have 10 of us, a 10-piece chamber ensemble with a big Estey reed organ right in front of it, built in the 1920s, and we will be performing the original silent movie accompaniment to F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu the Vampire, which is such a cult classic. We're a little early for Halloween, but we wanted to coordinate with Estey Fest. So this will be a lot of fun. The original score was reconstructed just a few years ago for what you would have heard in a movie house with a small 10 or 12 piece orchestra and the movie.
Excellent, that's exciting.
And it had a harmonium with it, so here we go, we get to do it.
One of the great things for the audience to know is that a couple of these concerts are going to be covered on BCTV is going to be taping them, so they will be available on BCTV and I believe also live streamed. So stay tuned for that. And we'll have information at the end of the show also about these various things. But let's carry on here. On Sunday, there are quite a few concerts also.
That's right, 3 in a row. Yeah, 3 in a row. Artis Wodehouse is an internationally acclaimed keyboardist. She plays all forms of historic keyboards. Really an interesting niche career. She's a great scholar. She's also a Vermonter. She lives up in South Hero, Vermont, and splits her time between there and New York City. She'll be here in Brattleboro at 1 o'clock on Sunday the 29th, doing a recital of relatively modern music specifically for Estey reed organs. A few things that she has adapted, and one premiere of a sonata that's been commissioned, brand new music for a 100-year-old Estey reed organ. So that'll be really exciting to have Artis Wodehouse with us on the Sunday of Estey Fest. We also have the Reed Organ Society, who's having their gathering as part of this festival. The Reed Organ Society does a festival concert. That will feature 7 organists from all across the United States and Canada playing 4 or more different Estey reed organs, showing off some of the best instruments that were built right here in Brattleboro. Some from the museum's collection, some from private collections that will be here on loan. So that's a chance to, I mean, it's really, for Brattleboro, that's a once in a lifetime to hear expert organists from the U.S. and Canada here. You know, our organists that are playing this concert, we have 2 from Canada, we've got me from Maine, we've got 1 from Tennessee, 1 from California, 1 from Minnesota. So I mean, really converged on Brattleboro, showing off a variety of music on instruments that were built here over 100 years ago.
That's so exciting. That's
and
so cool.
that will be available, Artists' program, as well as the Reed Organ Society Festival concert will be live streamed here on BCTV and recorded and available for posterity.
For posterity, that's so great. Where are you going to be performing?
So this is all at Epsilon Spires.
It's all at Epsilon
It's all at
Spires.
Epsilon Spires.
Okay.
So you can come in for all of these concerts on the Sunday of Estey Fest are by donation.
Yep.
You can come in and enjoy 1, 2, or 3 concerts. The evening concert at 7 o'clock on Sunday is sort of the wrap up, and that will feature the pipe organ. At Epsilon. That'll be another chance to hear this wonderful pipe organ. Organist Susan Ferre, who is a very distinguished organist, has had a career. I believe she's also played on the Epsilon series once already. So she's returning to Brattleboro with a program primarily of French music that spans it's music that could be played on reed or pipe organ. So she's sort of building that bridge just as Estey started with reed organs and went to building pipe organs. There's some repertoire that can sort of live between. So that'll be available. That program will be happening on Sunday at Epsilon also. So it's a chance to spend a great day in downtown Brattleboro with music, even with enough time to find some dinner too.
Let's circle back, George, just a little bit, back to the Estey Organ Museum itself.
Yeah.
It's housed in a very small space on what I suppose you could call the Estey campus.
Yes.
It was founded by Ned Phoenix about 20 some odd years ago.
That's right.
And it's having a bit of a renaissance. It's open May through October. Now, as I said, it's a small space. I have heard rumors, I don't know if any of them are true, that you are looking for a larger space, or there are folks in town looking for a larger space. I know the Brattleboro Historical Society is also looking for housing. So I'm just throwing that out there. I personally have only heard these things as rumors, but I have great hopes for them to be true, because it would be wonderful to have everything at least close by.
It's an amazing time to be part of these organizations. Brattleboro is a community that really understands and appreciates its history. I think that's part of what makes this place really special. A lot of people are familiar with that row of identical buildings on Burge Street where the Estey Company was located. In their heyday, the largest employer in the state of Vermont. A very progressive employer, equal pay for women 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. And all of those things make the Estey Company and Brattleboro very special, and tie into the Historical Society's work too.
And also Estey's built housing for the people
That's
who work
right,
for them.
Esteyville, just up above the factory. Our current president of the board is Dennis Waring, who has written the definitive book on not only Estey history, but really how it applies to the larger consumer revolution in America. You know, Jacob Estey here in Brattleboro, Vermont, somehow convinced 500,000 people that they needed an organ. It's really extraordinary. And Dennis's book, Manufacturing the Muse, the museum has just issued a second printing in paperback of that book. So you can buy that book on the Estey Organ Museum website, which we'll link to here, I believe. And or at the museum. We're open on Saturdays, like you said, Saturday afternoons, May through October. We're also open through most of Estey Fest during the last week of September, so you can see the special open hours on our website there. So Dennis's book is available, among some other things. And one of the greatest things about that museum is that all the organs are playable. You can come in, it's not just exhibits to look at. You can come in and you can play the instruments. And, you know, I suspect that all around Brattleboro, there are probably Estey organs in living rooms and maybe some in barns or attics. There may be Carpenter organs, too, who was another maker right here in Brattleboro. Pretty amazing that Brattleboro sustained 2 reed organ manufacturers.
That is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And didn't Jacob Estey start with a melodeon?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. A small reed organ.
Right.
Part of Estey Fest, if people are interested, expert reed organ restorer Alan Myers will be on hand, and he's doing a take apart a reed organ workshop. Where people can either bring an organ that they may have that they want to get working for their home, or this is neat, if you don't have one but you want one, the museum has a storeroom full of organs that we're giving away.
Oh my gosh.
Because, in the early days of the museum, a lot of people dropped them off on the doorstep, and all of a sudden there was about 150 reed organs kicking around at a very small museum that could only exhibit about 20.
Wow. Wow.
Many of them need work, of course, they are over 100 years old, but it's simple work, it's all mechanical work, there's only very few specialty materials, so if you're mechanically minded, you like a good project, maybe an intergenerational project with grandchildren or something, just a little hands-on, simple tools in the workshop. A reed organ is so much fun because the reward at the end is you have a musical instrument that you can play.
What a great idea, and you folks are available for help with that
Yeah,
kind
so
of
if
thing.
people are interested in participating in that workshop, we're trying to sign up 6 teams of locals during Estey Fest to participate in that. There are some details on the website for that as well. And then support will be provided beyond the initial workshop. Alan has volunteered to be on call for people as they continue their project.
Wonderful.
So it's a really special opportunity.
There's so many great contacts here, for people to know about.
The Organ Museum is just an amazing resource. It's a wealth of information. The people that are involved are really extraordinary people. It's a great team. I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yes,
really.
and you also have a great board.
We do.
Which is really wonderful.
We do, who runs the entire museum. We have no paid staff at the Estey Organ Museum. It's all volunteer run. The board coordinates everything, and then we have an enormous roster of museum hosts that volunteer their time when the museum is open to man the welcome desk, talk about the exhibits, and tour people through our museum.
Now, are you getting the feeling, George, that there's a bit of a renaissance?
It does feel that way. I think that there's some synergy happening right now with Epsilon Spires being relatively a new entity in the community, just a couple of years old, with the Historical Society thinking about their future and their location and their collections. The Estey Organ Museum has brought on new board members, including myself, which has helped really make the instruments more functional, particularly 3 of the museum's trustees that have come on in the last 2 years are experienced in working on the instruments.
Oh, nice.
So that has really led to getting instruments in the collection to be in tip-top shape so that we can have people play them, we can take them into the community for concerts, we can make recordings on them if we want, all of these things. So there is a bit of a renaissance in that sense. I sense the museum is growing. I don't know if the rumors will prove to be true that we're growing physically in space, but I think the key to that is the wonderful time we're having collaborating with other entities in Brattleboro. So we're really making inroads in the community.
Also, there's been some great funding available for all of this. The Vermont Arts Council, Artworks, the National Endowment for the Arts, and of course Brattleboro Historical Society as well.
That's
so
right.
that's again rolled into all of...
And the generosity of this community is really at the core of it. The museum completely survives on donations. The entire budget is built on grants and donations to keep these collections relevant and to keep the instruments in the community, as well as just such a unique part of local history. There's so much overlap between what Estey built in Brattleboro and the history of the community.
That's right.
Estey's son-in-law, Levi Fuller, becoming governor of Vermont and president of the Estey Company.
There's so much history.
So many things.
So many things. George, this has been just fabulous.
It's been a delight to be here.
It's
Thank
really
you so
fun.
much.
I just want to say that, as George has pointed out, we have so much going on with the Historical Society and all of the people who are posting on Facebook, the then and now photographs, which are always fun. And once you get in there, there's also the high school is doing great podcasts with Joe Rivers. They've done over 400 podcasts of historical places, as they covered Esteyville, all kinds of things. So if you dig a little deep, you find these wonderful little niches where you can learn so much about this place where we live and where we call home. Thank you so much for tuning in. The information for the Estey Fest will be coming right along after I stop talking. And thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you next time.